Hello, everyone. So, this is really good news. This first headline, I'm using the Guardian's summary today, although I am going to show some other stuff. But this is really good news. So, let me explain. Why is it good news that Ukraine has now not only some homemade weapons, stuff that is produced in Ukraine, designed in Ukraine, but they also now have a surplus. It's that this has been a problem since the beginning of the war, keeping up with the demand. So, if you recall, in the earlier years, one of the reasons Ukraine relied so heavily on the allies, including the United States, for basically anything was because of the difficulties of designing, setting up manufacturing, and all of the logistics in the war conditions for any new weapons. So that has been turned around, and it also helps, of course, without a doubt, that there are now multiple international collaborations. And one of the things that Zelensky had mentioned is that not only does Ukraine have a surplus of its own weapons at home, but it is in the position to help out in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf, in Europe, in the Caucasus Mountains. So that is huge. And again, I invite everyone to consider the manufacturing process for literally anything, any product, anywhere. And now imagine that it is something that is constantly going to be targeted by the enemy and something that is sorely needed by the country being designed and manufactured in the war conditions. So this is truly amazing. Ukraine continues its assault on Russia's oil industry. We already talked many times about why that is the case. In addition to that big fiasco in Tuapse, Ukrainian army hit an oil facility that is far into Russia in Perm. So that's 1,500 kilometers, 900 miles from Ukraine. That's a flex. And so this was carried out by the long-range drones. Now there is a huge fire there to match Tuapse. And I saw some of the messages from Telegram. Basically, people who live in the city saying, we are a big, important, city with a million population. What the heck? Why don't we have air defenses? And there is no answer. All of the air defenses are focused in Russia around Moscow and Leningrad / St. Petersburg. You're not getting any. I mean, they can't even defend the border regions properly. And you think that being, 900 miles away from the front, you're going to get any defenses? Sorry, guys, you're on your own. And you can go and blame your own government for this. They decided this. So, and it is very possible that there will be no help from the Russian government in terms of the cleanup, in terms of providing breathing protection or anything like that, because that is what we saw in Tuapse. They got nothing. The whole stolen grain story continues. Ukraine is demanding that Israel detain the ship that is technically listed under Greece base management and that allegedly contains the grain from the occupied areas of Ukraine. Now, the company that owns the ship denies being involved in any such operations, but of course, they will deny this. Israel is saying they're investigating the evidence that Ukraine had submitted, and I'm sure this is going to be a long and ugly conversation, because now not just Ukraine, but the European Union is considering sanctions against Israel because of this. Because basically, and Israel was already looking bad because of Gaza. Israel was already looking bad because of Lebanon. Now it's looking really bad because it is buying stolen grain from a country that is notoriously anti-Semitic and is attacking another country. So this is not helping Israel's position. And again, I encourage everybody to differentiate between the government of Israel and people of Israel. And I'm sure there are people of Israel who are outraged by this as well. But as in the United States, what the world sees is the actions of the government. And that is right now, again, as in the United States, really, really hurting the people and their position. Now, we are also seeing some numbers out of Russia. Not only did Russia make no progress in Ukraine, and not only did they suffer record losses, and not only did their oil industry suffer some serious strikes, their economy had shrunk by a third of the percent. So, again, at this point, as much as they're hurting Ukrainian civilians, the horrors they have inflicted on Ukrainian people, they're hurting themselves too. Now, look at that last bit. So Putin and Trump had a call talking about a potential ceasefire for May 9th. Here's the problem with this. And this is from Independent, but there are other sources that are basically reporting the same thing, including Ukrainian sources. The whole thing took place without Ukrainian participation at all. So now Zelensky's like, what the fuck are you talking about? How can you be agreeing to anything without the participation of Ukraine? And this has been typical. This has been typical. So now, if the terms of the ceasefire are unacceptable to Ukraine, both Russia and Trump can point at Ukraine and say, aha, you see, they're aggressive bastards. They're not wanting peace and so on and so forth. Let's not forget the fiasco that was the so-called Easter ceasefire. So I'd like to remind everybody about that one. So we'll see what happens. At this point, as before, Ukraine has no reason, none whatsoever, to trust Russia, to trust Trump. We'll see what happens. Would people welcome a ceasefire? Of course. But again, Ukraine doesn't want like a couple of hours or a couple of days. They want something solid in place, justifiably so. And Russia continues to maintain their my way or the highway policy. So let's see what happens next. More to come.